With the ultimate motive of having successful leaders pay it forward, Clarence's goal is to create a passion-filled legacy that will shift the trajectory of millions of people seeking a better life. His talk today is around courageous leadership. And I'm excited because he talks about the 5 immutable laws, and he's going to share with us one of those laws here. And he's going to talk about and create a psychological view of how fears stop you from being our best and teach you when and how to create the courage to rise from that fear. So Clarence, it is my honor and privilege to welcome you to the stage.
Thank you, Candy. Thank you, everyone. Today we're going to talk about courageous leader. And I know the question came up earlier, how many leaders we have in the room. Any leaders in the room? Yeah, I know you're all leaders, yes. How many courageous leaders do we have in the room? Oh, okay. A few hands went up. I like that. Well, it does take a level of courage to be a leader for many, many reasons because, you know, it's a jungle out there. Do you find that? It's a jungle out there. And if you're the right courageous leader, you can forge the path through that jungle where people will follow you. You agree with that? Your job as a leader is to forge that path, but it takes courage because the jungle is full of lions and tigers and bears. Aha, see, you know, you've experienced that jungle. If you've traveled here from out of town, you've probably experienced the challenges that the jungle presents every single day. You're challenged every single day. If you went through the airport, the TSA probably said, let's see that bag won't go through the conveyor belt one more time. You're challenged. Little challenges. If you took a cab here, after you signed the credit card receipt, the cab driver may have given you that eye that says, that tip wasn't quite big enough. Little challenges. You are challenged every day by people and by life. Life challenges you all the time. Now, I did mention the book that goes from breadline to boardroom, and what I talk about in the book are the 5 immutable laws. And we talked about some of those already this morning. Choice, the very first one, big one, choice. Commitment, we'll talk about courage right now. Confidence and celebration. I encourage that you dive deep into each of those because without those, if you break any of those laws, you are really breaking the tenets of your personal leadership because personal leadership must precede professional leadership. Candy mentioned it earlier. And leadership is an inside job. So I encourage you to take these 5 C's, these 5 immutable laws. And they're immutable because they can't be broken. It's like gravity. They exist. If you break these, you're going to have a tougher time. This is the foundation of your success. So, but one thing that happens with us, and we'll talk about one aspect of it, but I'd just like to share this with you. Give me a second. Now, we just did a breathing exercise. And I think I'm out of breath. All right, well, dizzy. This can represent your life. It's full, it's shiny, it's colorful. It's got all the celebratory natures of everything that you want in life. Is this the life that you want? Yes? This is the life that you have? I have this life. I want this life. I like this life. Or would you rather have a life that was more like this? Empty, shriveled up. It has a lot of promise, but it's not full of the things that you want in life. So we all want this, yes? Well, even if you have this, it's important not to lose it because there are leaks in this all the time. What are some of the leaks? Stress, overwhelm, worry. We're going to fix the leaks here. Don't go to the restroom. A low emotional intelligence. Self-doubt. The biggest leak of all, fear. Right? This will make the difference not only in your life, but in the life of the people who are following you, the people who look up to you. Now, it took me a while to figure this one out. In fact, when I was 12 years old, my mother moved us from Cleveland to New York. And in New York, we didn't just live in New York. We lived in, we'll just call it the ghetto. So I have a question for you quickly. Does fear keep you safe, or is fear a dangerous thing for you? I would take a survey, but I don't have much time. I'm going to tell you. Fear keeps you safe when it's lions and tigers and bears, right? Because it will tell you that you need to run, you need to avoid whatever that is. It's the reason you lock your door at night and put on the burglar alarm system when you go to sleep, because you fear somebody's going to break in. So fear can keep you safe. If you know that story, it could be witches and flying monkeys. It's all around. It could be the TSA or the cab driver. All of these things are always challenging you. People are challenging you. Life challenges you. So fear keeps you safe in one respect. But when is it dangerous? It's dangerous when it stops you from becoming what you were intended to become. It's dangerous when you look at fear and it stops you from being your true, courageous leader. And what are some of the things that stop you? You're afraid of failing. I'm not going to ask that person to marry me because they may say no. I'm not going to pick up the phone and call that client because I don't want to hear no. I don't like rejection. I'm fearful of rejection. And I might be embarrassed if I ask that person to go out with me in a public place and they say no. Everybody will know. We fear all of these things internally. I'm not going to speak up in a meeting because someone may criticize me. Every time you pay attention to those fears, you are not being all that you can be, and you're not being courageous enough to be the leader that you were meant to be. Everybody get that? If you get that, say, I get that. I get that. All right. See, what I like to do is, when I say I get that, it's yours. I'm going to give you my wisdom, and once you say you get it, I'm moving on. Can I move on? All right. When I was 12, we moved to New York in the ghetto. We were in the projects. Anybody familiar with the New York projects? 17, 18 stories of concrete, steel. It's like a prison. And the prisoners in there are insane. I mean, it is a rough, rough place. In fact, coming from Cleveland to New York, I was kind of a country bumpkin. And as a country bumpkin in New York, I got picked on every single day. In fact, there was a 45-day period there where I got picked on and beat up. Not picked on or beat up, picked on and beat up. After 45 days, I looked like Apollo Creed from Rocky IV. I mean, I was just done. My mother got so mad, she came out to defend me. She came out and stood in front of these teenagers and just read them the riot act. You don't want an angry black woman whose son is being picked on to come out and dress you up and down, because that's what she did. I feared for her life. She has no idea that doing that made my life even worse. So any mothers out there trying to defend your children, let them get through it somehow, even though I was beat up for 45 days straight. But here's the deal. Do you think that was great training for being a corporate leader? Oh gosh, yes. It was. It was. You know why? Because in the sophisticated, clean hallways of corporate America, corporate life, there are the same thug-like bullies and gangs that will beat you up every day. I know. I've been beat up there too. And I've got the scars to prove it. It is a jungle out there. You get my meaning now? It's a jungle out there. Lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. Embarrassment, failure, rejection. Oh my. All of those fears can stop you from moving forward or can keep you safe. Here's the executives that will ride you and beat you up. It's one of those things that's called motivation. The carrot and the stick. Have you seen that one? Oh my gosh, it's terrible. It's external. Carrot is a promise of the reward. The stick is a threat of punishment. It's used every single day. There's another way to get people to follow. There's another way to get people to perform higher. Hopefully, we're going to go through some of that. I know Candy and I are on the same page that way, and I know she's going to cover some of that. But I'm going to show you my courage model. I used to call it the bravery model until I understood the difference between courage and bravery. There is a difference. Bravery is one of those things where the private in the army sees the grenade and just jumps on it to save his platoon, just suddenly. That's a brave act. But courage is a little bit different. Courage comes with it's more continuous, it's more contiguous, it's more of what you know about yourself so that you can display courage on a consistent basis. And so if this model is very easy to follow, and I'll just share it with you very, very quickly. If you see that fear is at its very highest on the left, I have what I call the perceived risk line. This is the risk that you are taking when you take action, whatever that action is. If your fear is at the very highest and your courage is at the very lowest, that perceived risk is very high to take an action. So you're not going to take an action. You, in fact, are risk averse, and you will turn and run from it. That make sense? In fact, if you were to act on it in this mode, that would be reckless. You're not ready. Your fear is too high, your courage is too low. I'm not going to go through the whole chart, but let's just go to the other side. The other side is when your courage is at its highest and your fear is at its lowest, it's actually safe. And it's reckless not to take action. It's a risk reversal. In risk reversal, you'll get to a place where you actually run to the roar. Anybody ever heard that, run to the roar? It comes from an old African story where the elders would teach the young warriors how to build their courage. And the story goes where the lions, the young lions would be at one end of the Serengeti or the valley as they were hunting for prey, and the older lions would be at the other end. And the older lions have lost strength, they've lost their speed, they've lost a few teeth, and so they weren't good hunters anymore, but they still had big voices. And so as the herd that was being hunted moved closer and closer to the older lions would stand up and give a mighty roar, which would put fear in the herd, and the herd would turn and run into the jaws of the skilled, young, hungry lions. So the moral of the story that the elders would tell the young warriors is that sometimes you have to build your courage high enough to run to the roar. That's where you can be safe. So that's the issue with this chart. If your courage is high enough, you will actually get a risk reversal, and you will be safer running toward the roar, and reckless not taking that chance, not speaking up in that meeting, not calling it like it is, not being your true, authentic leader of a self that you can and should be. We respond to fear in a certain way that it helps us survive. We have the first part of our mind, our brain, takes in what happens to us, and it decides whether or not it's a danger for us. It's a survival piece. It's called the reptilian brain. It's the first level of thinking that happens. Have you been in a place where someone you didn't see coming up comes up behind you and they touch you on the back? I was at a conference about 3 months ago, and there was about 1,000 people there. So people were bumping into each other, having a good time, and it was really crowded. So having someone touch me is not a big deal, but at some point, someone wanted to get my attention, and it came from behind, touched me on my shoulder, and I immediately did one of those. That was the reptilian brain saying, oh, is that danger? Should you run? Should you turn and fight? Should you freeze? The fight, flight, or freeze. That's the reptilian brain in place. But we have higher orders of thinking. We have the limbic system. We have that is about your emotions and your behavior. And we have the neocortex that is a higher level of thinking that allows us to reason and do many other things. And those other layers of our mind, they check in and say, should we validate what the reptilian brain has said to us, or should we just suppress that fight, flight, or freeze? But the initial thing that happens is the fight, flight, or freeze. So you are going to have fear in your life. Fear does not go away. I'm not here to say you need to be fearless. That's a myth. You will always have fear. How you respond to it and what you do with it is what matters. And the only way to really get past it is not to get rid of fear, but to build your courage high enough to overcome your fear. You get that? If you get that, say, I get that. I get that. Okay. All right, so this is what we're talking about. Now, bear with me here, because I know this looks a little morbid, and I don't mean for it to be morbid, because here's the real deal about this. The only thing that matters on this tombstone is not the date, not your name, not the date you were born or the date you expire. It's that dash in the middle. That's the only thing that matters there. We can't change the date that we were born. We don't know the date we're going to expire. Yes, you will expire at some point. If you fear death, I'm just going to tell you it's an irrational fear, because we all are. No one gets out of this alive. I hate to break it to you. We all will. We just don't know what the expiration date is. So if you can't change any of those dates without some real major stuff going on the back end, what's really important is the dash. Now here's where I'm going to tell you how to build your courage. Now you know what courage is. You know how it shows up as lions and tigers and bears, or embarrassment, rejection, and failure, and how it affects your life, and how you can run to the roar, or run and turn, or the reptilian brain. You got all that stuff, right? In about 15 minutes. I hope you feel like you've gotten a lot. I'm going to tell you how to build your courage now. The best way to build your courage is to understand that dash. Now, not the dash of your life, but the dash of your story. We all have a story. You heard mine very briefly. From the breadline to the boardroom. That's my story. Homeless to success. It doesn't always have to be from rags to riches, but you have a story. I know you have a story. You wouldn't be here now if you didn't have your own story. I would like for you to think about it right now. What is your story? And we all have different stories. It could be from single mom to Wonder Woman, or whatever it is that you are. You have a story. What's important about your story is not the single mom piece. It's not the Wonder Woman piece. It's about what happened there. When I tell people from breadline to a boardroom, they want to know about the two. What is the two? I understand breadline, I understand boardroom. What did you do? That's where your story lies. When you get clear about your story, that two, that dash, that is when you have a key to the courage that it takes to be a courageous leader. Now, the other thing with the story is the story itself needs to be boiled down into that phrase. From this to that. Put it in those terms. I want you to put it in the terms from this to that. From single mom to superwoman. From breadline to boardroom. I want your story written that way. I don't want the 30-minute version. I want that phrase. If you can do that, now the next thing that happens is to understand that two piece. That's your truth. Now, if you're from single mom to Wonder Woman, maybe your truth is, my kids are the most important thing to me, and I will never do anything that will harm them. Your story is another sentence. Maybe that's the truth of who you are. Family is everything. That might be your truth. For me, it was about choices. I chose to be homeless. I chose to be in the boardroom. That's why the first immutable law is about choice. You choose leadership. You choose where you are. You're here because of choice. That's my truth. It might not be yours. You have a truth, and I want you to find it, because that truth is your secret weapon. If you were to walk down a dangerous street at night with nothing, you would be pretty fearful, I'm sure. But if you had a bodyguard with you, you'd be a little more courageous. If you knew Taekwondo or karate or some martial art, if you were a black belt, you'd be a little more courageous. If you had mace, you'd be more courageous. If you had a gun, you'd be more courageous walking down that dangerous street. Your truth is your secret weapon. So anytime you're feeling that fear of moving forward on an action you want to take, and you want to create a risk reversal, go back to that secret weapon. Your truth will get you past that. It's gotten you past so much already. Don't leave it behind. Don't leave that weapon at home. Take it with you. Carry it with you. It's with you always. Okay. With that, as a courageous leader, when you are living life that way, I mean, you, as a courageous leader, your life is really about being better, becoming more, becoming your best you. And when you live life on those terms, people will follow you. When you live life on those terms, you will attract the best of the best. My friends, my courageous leaders, it may be your time to run to the roar. Thank you.